So now it seems society is going to collapse by 2040. Well, that's a bummer. Alright, well that's a bit disconcerting to say the least. Society collapsing by 2040, what's that, like 19 years away, give or take? Not a big fan of that. No, I'll be an old codger, a very old codger. You think I'm old now? By 2040 I'll be pretty damned old. So I might not even notice if society collapses by 2040. Don't know. Or I might be the coolest old guy ever. That's another possibility. But this has been bouncing around the Ethernet for the last little while, and it's been popping up in all kinds of places and all kinds of publications, and it's essentially tracking back to a study which was conducted by MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, back in the early 70s, and they were just they built some computer model, and we're going to get into this all of this, because this is stuff we need to know. If society is going to collapse, we need to be preparing, we need to be getting our shit together. I don't know, building bunkers, digging bunkers, finding a cave to possibly shelter in. I don't know. Buying in tins of beans, all that sort of stuff. I'm not saying you should do that, but if society is going to collapse, we may have to make arrangements. Now, let's hop on over here just till I show you what I'm talking about. Here we have here from technology. MIT predicted society's collapse by 2040, and humanity is right on track, says Monique Khanna. That's updated on the 15th of July, so it's all pretty very recent stuff. So you can see there. Now we're not going to read this. There's a couple of lads giving a bit of a power salute there. As you can see behind them there, society is collapsing. Now, right, we can jump over here to the Mail Online, and you get the same kind of shtick. 1972 prediction of the collapse of society is on track to happen by 2040, says the Mail. Economic growth will halt in a decade. Food will become scarce. Remember what I said about the tins of beans. And human population will decline, KPMG study finds. Now that's, again, I'm not going to read this, I just want to show you a little bit about what's bouncing around the place here. We've got a picture. No, we don't have a picture there. I thought it might be more pictures of society collapsing. So jumping on over here to Metro, same thing again from Jeff Parsons. Smart folk at MIT, because they are pretty smart, way too smart for my blood. But you can't just get into MIT if you're a bit of a slow learner. You have to be pretty quick-witted. Now, smart folk at MIT predicted in 1972 that society would collapse by 2040. There's a picture of a bit of an arid landscape. Again, signifying society collapsing, and droughts and stuff, no water. All right, fair enough. Now, again, RT, same theme. Epidemic of food riots could trigger society collapse by 2040, warn scientists. There's a picture of, well, that's actually just pretty much any Dublin street at the moment. Homeless lads there in tents. And people going about their business. Yes, that's just another normal day in Dublin City in 2021, but I don't think it was taken in Dublin, but it could be. Anyway, that's they're taking it there. As you can see, some lad sitting on a box with a homemade sign. Right, okay, more societal collapse. No, sorry, I just threw this one in because I just liked the name. No idea who they are. From Hunch Mag. Sorry, this is a MacGuffin. I just like the name. It's not adding anything to the discussion as such. But do you read Hunch Mag? Well, you probably should, because it's probably great. Don't read it myself, but I will now that I've found it. Hunch Mag say in the gadgets section. Don't know why this is in the gadgets section. Societal collapse. There will be a global economic and social collapse by 2040, says Hunch Mag on the 16th of July, 2021. There's a picture of a factory. Doesn't seem to be much social collapse going on there. All the lights are on. Right, so basically, again, I'm not going to get into this because I have been poking. I've been poking around, and sometimes you have to do a bit of poking, and sometimes you have to do a lot of poking to get what you want or to get a result. So you can see there, Hunch Mag is giving us basically the main points there. There's a cartoon with dinosaurs and I assume that's the comet that wiped them out. All right, fair enough. From Hunch Mag. Yeah, I have to check more of their stuff. It's a great name. I love it. I only put that in there because I found it at Hunch Mag. That's worth a look. Now, right, here's where I was trying to get to. A little bit of a circuitous route there, but these things are always worth waiting for, and this case is no exception. Now, Dana Levine. He's done a thing on this. He's done a bit of digging on this, and I was poking around and I found him. So who's Dana Levine? Do we know who he is? Oh, there's the thing. He's okay. He's a hacker. All right, fair enough. Well, okay, useful skill. PM, Prime Minister. I'm not quite sure. Sorry. Don't know what post meridian. I don't know what he's going, where he's going with the PM. And 3x entrepreneur. Okay, is he an entrepreneur of 3 things, or is he just 3 times the entrepreneur of other entrepreneurs? Don't know. But if anybody ever asks what's better than being an entrepreneur, well, there's your answer. Now you know. Being a 3 times entrepreneur. Right, determined to build things people actually want, says Dana Levine, and I can't fault the man for that. People should build things that people actually want. Unfortunately, in today's world, they usually build things you don't need and you didn't even know you wanted. Right, okay. Right, now, let's get into the meat and drink of this, because this is important. If society's going to collapse, I think we should all be aware of it. We should all be ahead of the curve, and if we need to take precautions, then let's start. The earlier the better, basically. The earlier, don't leave it till the last minute. Don't go to Tesco the day before the collapse and then, try and buy up your pasta and tins of beans and porridge oat flakes and stuff like that, because the shelves will be empty. Now, from Dana Levine, the 3 times entrepreneur. My take on the study from MIT that predicts societal collapse. Right, what's Dana got to say for himself? In the past couple of days, I've seen a bunch of headlines claiming things like MIT predicted in 1972 that society will collapse this century. New research shows we are on schedule, or new study confirms we're right on time for a complete societal collapse. As someone who likes to look beneath the surface on pop science articles, I've found that it is possible to learn by looking past the sensationalism and reading the original paper. Well, good man, Dana, because I didn't do that, and that's why I have you. Same thing, I would be of that ilk. You see all these headlines bouncing around the ethernet, bouncing around the Twitter sphere, and you're thinking, oh my god, that's horrendous. But sometimes you have to go back to the actual study, the actual thing, and see what the hell is it all about. Sometimes these headlines are bogus. They just sensationalise a thing that isn't even that bad. Anyway, Dana, right, let's go on. It turns out, says Dana, that these headlines aren't in response to the original 1972 report, which became a best-selling book called Limits to Growth. I haven't read it. But they deal with a paper published last year by Gaia Harrington, entitled Update to Limits of Growth, comparing the World 3 model with empirical data. Harrington is sustainability and system dynamics analysis lead. Oh, that's a good title. What do you do? I'm a system dynamics analysis lead. Good. Probably get a pretty good badge with that job, and a damn big salary, I should imagine, at KPMG. That's where she works, KPMG, so it's a good firm. Well known, well respected, and made the paper available on their website, and then she published in a scientific journal. So so this is all coming out of not the original report, but of this Gaia Harrington person. Her update, she's gone and she's looked at the thing, and she's basically brought it up to date to see, well, where are we with this? Were the boffins, were they on target? Were they right, or were they just basically filling in time and drawing a salary? Now, right, he goes on. Vice published Vice Media, I assume. Vice published a fairly in-depth article discussing this paper, which was then picked up and summarised by a bunch of somewhat lazy publications. That's a bit harsh. Somewhat lazy. I was flicking through a few. Somewhat lazy publications. Dana. Yeah, okay. Well, look, Well, anyway, he's done the legwork here, so we'll give him a bit of kudos on that. So I downloaded the paper, says Dana, and took a look. And that's why we're here, looking at your stuff, Dana. Are we headed for certain doom and disaster in just a few years? Well, the reality is a lot more complex than that, and these things usually are. The 1972 paper dealt with a system dynamics computer model named World 3. Well, they didn't have great computers in 72. As I recall, I think the extent of computer games at that stage was tennis or pong, the two little bats. You kind of had a little dot that went over and back. I think that's kind of where they didn't even have Space Invaders in 72, as far as I know. Maybe they did, but anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track there. This isn't the computer gaming channel. Right, so this World 3 model that the MIT boffins had in 72, it was generated to study interactions between a number of factors that influence population growth and industrial output. The original study and subsequent research was funded by the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome, what was that, like a soccer club or something? I'm guessing not. It's a European organisation focused on solving the larger problems facing humanity. Nothing to do with soccer. Right, World 3, this is a computer program that they were using, was created by Dennis Meadows, who at that point was on MIT faculty and served as the director of the Club of Rome. Not a soccer club. On the predicament of mankind. So they were already thinking, right, okay lads, where are we going here, and how long is it going to take before the whole thing basically implodes? This is the type of stuff they were looking at, and they built this computer. And they fed all the stuff into it, the data that they had, and the predictions, I assume, that they had. They fed it all into this World 3 thing to see what it would say to them, what it would tell them. And what it told them, was, among other things, was a little bit dismal. Right, okay. So the researchers started with empirical measures of these variables, and then created a number of scenarios that predicted future outcomes given different constraints, says Dana. The original study included 12 different scenarios, although Harrington only discusses 3. All right, so you see, she was just kind of narrowing the thing down, and there was actually 12 different scenarios that this computer model came up with, but she only took 3 of them for whatever reason. Maybe she ran out of space, maybe she didn't have a large enough copybook, I don't know. But she only really went into 3 of the scenarios, so it's not exactly the full Monty there. In addition, says Dana, Harrington includes a 4th scenario that was introduced in subsequent works. Okay. So, what are these scenarios? I know you're chomping at the bit here. You can barely contain yourself, as I can't myself. Right, the first one is business as usual, BAU, business as usual. Right, this scenario assumes, says Dana, that the world keeps conducting business as usual. Changes nothing, keeps rolling on, aiming to maximise industrial production with no concessions to other goals. Sometime in the early to mid 21st century, it becomes too expensive to continue extracting non-renewable resources from the ground, coal and iron and all that cobalt or whatever else they're digging up these days. And industrial output drops precipitously. From this point, things get very bad for society. Well, if industry collapses, it's generally not a good thing. Food production and population also have large resulting drops. The business as usual scenario is meant to highlight the risks of continuing to pursue our current economic strategy. So that's basically, we just keep digging the bejesus out of the earth, mining it into oblivion, cutting down the rainforests like there's no tomorrow. this is where BAU, business as usual scenario, this is what it predicts. So he goes on, this scenario has been most widely discussed as it was the most gloomy of the scenarios presented in the original model. It also has an important flaw in that it drastically underestimates the quantity of natural resources available for extraction. Right, so they got the figures wrong. They underestimated just how much resources was there to be plugged. All right, so under this scenario, we would have already this is their original prediction. So under this original prediction of business as usual, we would have already started to see significant declines in resource availability, which has not yet happened. And you know yourself, they're still going hammer and tongs at all the mining and all the cutting down and stuff, and now they're even gone into fracking, so that they're even adding on stuff that they didn't even know they could do. This shortcoming in the original model has led to criticism of the World 3 approach in general. Now you can see here, Dana has, that this is their, I assume their, this is their thingamajig there. All right, can we look at that there? Yes, we can. Right, so you see here there's a lot of squiggles, a lot of coloured lines, so you can kind of make out what's going on here. Right, so starting at 1900, going up to 2100. Now, we're kind of in the middle here, well, slightly past the middle here. So as you can see, what's that blue one? The blue one's population. So population is there, it's rising. It kind of peaks at about 2020. All right, so kind of peaking about now, and then it declines off. Now, what's this green one? That's industrial output, right? So again, industrial output, not great at the start of the 1900 industrial revolution, all that sort of stuff going on there. So it's kicking off, and then it peaks again on this business as usual. It peaks at about kind of 2020, 2030 peaks, and then basically falls off a cliff down to basically nothing. Lads probably blacksmiths are probably back at that stage, and cobblers and lads making, mending your bucket probably at that point. So kind of gone full circle really back to 1900. So that's your industrial output on the business as usual model, kind of goes to shit after about 2020, 2030. So it's kind of around now. What else have we got? What's that purple one? Oh, that's food. Right, so food again starts low and it kind of peaks again same time. A lot of stuff peaking kind of around now or not far from now. And then it also declines now, not as fast as the industrial thing, but it kind of peters out and it gets pretty low again. You're nearly back to the levels of 1900. So essentially everything is kind of going south on the business as usual model. Your pollution. Now there's the pollution thing, which is a big thing at the moment, recycling and all that. Don't know if they were really on the ball in 1972 about seeing where the whole recycle thing would go and the green thing and all that, but we'll read on, we might get more info on that. So in this graph here, this is the original business as usual model. The whole pollution thing kind of, again, it kind of peaks at about 2040. Yeah, then it kind of, again, I assume because, your industrial thing is kind of going right through the floor. So they're not mining, they're not cutting down as much trees. So I guess they're not belching out as much smoke into the atmosphere. I should imagine in my layman speak, that's why your pollution thing kind of goes down. Right, fair enough. Right, that's that graph. Now, fortunately, says Dana, the incorrect natural resource assumptions were corrected in a follow-up model. So they did a revamp of that because they got the figures wrong in terms of just how much resources was there to be extracted. This is your non-renewable resources. They got that figure wrong. So right, so they updated the model. So this assumes double the quantity of natural resources, which has some interesting consequences. Rather than natural resources becoming the limiting factor, pollution becomes a key constraint. Right, so this, when you put in the right figures for how much resources is there to be got, suddenly the problem doesn't become you run out of resources. The problem becomes pollution. because your industry is just rolling on. So instead of it going off a cliff like the first model, you're now basically pumping out CO2 and all kinds of bad shit for a hell of a lot longer. So right, under the original business model, yeah, we saw that one, we went through that one, pollution levels off and declines by the mid 2000s due to resource constraints on industrial production. But in the newer model, it increases exponentially until it is literally off the chart. Right, industrial output takes a precipitous drop starting in about 2040, as does population and food production. In many ways, this scenario is even gloomer than the first one. Jesus. And many say that it predicts the dire outcome of allowing climate change to go unchecked. Right, so here we go. We've got another model here. Right, this is basically the updated version of the first one with what they now think is the correct numbers put in. So what does this tell us? Right, again, we're starting at 1900, it was 2000 in the middle and 2100. So we've got our squiggly lines and our coloured pens out again, and right, what do we see this time? Well, we see what the green one is industrial output. So now suddenly this one, that goes on for longer. So we're now getting to nearly 2050. 2040, I should assume that's probably where they're going with this. So you get to nearly halfway through the century before the industrial thing starts to go off a cliff. Now, resources, right, okay, you see that's basically going down. It tanks. From kind of now, 2000, it's kind of dropping, and for the whole of the rest of the century, it just drops down to nearly nothing. Your population, the blue squiggly line here, your population again, it's kind of going up as it is steadily, and then it peaks just before 2050, 2040 again. I should imagine this is probably linking into the societal collapse headlines. So your population gets to about 2040, and then in line with your industrial output collapsing, your population collapse. But look at this, so what is this, the yellow one? Food, same thing. Around 2040, in line with your industrial output, in line with your population, your food basically declines. In fact, it goes a little before the population, slightly before that. So one assumes we're running out of food, so that's not good for for even maintaining a population if you've got no food to feed them. So that drops off a cliff. But look at this one here. Here's the biggie, the orange line, the orange dotted line here. That's your pollution on this new model. That's your pollution. So basically, it's kind of okay for all through the 20th century. Then we hit the millennium, things starts to go up, as we're seeing. I think we're living this at the moment, and basically, it just, I don't know, just goes into orbit. The thing just basically just flies off into the sun. It's off the charts. And that's even by 60, the thing is just in meltdown. So your pollution on this chart, this is the renewed one, your pollution has just basically gone into oblivion. Now, I don't know, this was an updated version of the original model. I don't know, did they really factor in the whole Green New Deal and all this sort of recycling that we're doing? I mean, we are very, very conscious, certainly in the West, very, very conscious of recycling. We're very conscious of renewables. We're very so electric cars coming out, you've got all that stuff going on there. I don't know if in 1972 they kind of realised we were going to be that conscious of things. But no, this is basically a model of business as usual, BAU, business as usual. That's assuming we don't bother our arse doing any of that. So this is pretty dire, but I don't think we have to worry about this one because it's not business as usual. No, it's not perfect, but I think the whole climate change thing is a very big issue now. So no, this dire graph here, I don't think we need to worry about because it is definitely not business as usual at the moment. Now, let's go on, Dana. What's this? CT, comprehensive technology. Right, so there's another scenario. The comprehensive technology scenario assumes that humanity develops a number of different technological solutions to pollution generation and resource limits. These involve increasing land yields, which is going on all the time. They are getting more out of the land, they're growing more crops, they're figuring ways of growing more crops, developing new sources of renewable energy. Again, we've got wind power, we've got solar power, they're trying to do something with the waves, so Yes, a lot of work going on there. The whole battery thing is becoming much more technologically advanced. Right, we're still aiming to maximise industrial output, but not at the expense of exhausting our resources or spiking pollution. Now, I think we're getting a little bit more realistic here, because I think this is a little bit more of where we're at and where we're going, rather than the first two graphs. Right, so the end result is that industrial output does decline on a similar time frame to the previous thing, but we managed to get pollution under control and population levels out rather than crashing. This is probably the best outcome achievable without completely changing our societal priorities. Right, so we've got another graph here of this scenario, and this doesn't look as bad. This, I think myself, is a bit more kind of where we're at and where we're likely to go. So what have we got in this graph? Jesus, we're getting very technical. We're a very technical channel here. Didn't exactly plan it that way, but these things just take on a life of their own. Now, looking at this thing here, right, let's have a look at our squiggly lines again. Right, again, everything starts pretty much in the same place. We've got our industrial output, which kind of peaks again middle of the century, 2040, same as the previous ones, and then doesn't go off a cliff. It does decrease, but it doesn't collapse, all right? Because we're doing a lot more renewable stuff. We're no longer just pumping stuff out of the ground, cutting down trees. Industry is now doing some renewable stuff that is not basically depleting the planet. So, or there's at least a lot more emphasis on that. So that's not too bad there, right? So okay, you can live with that. What have we got here in the blue line? Population. Again, we're gradually rising, and this time now it's a bit more gradual, and we're kind of getting to peak population, according to this, at about 2050, 2040, say. And it doesn't collapse on this one. It stays the same. Right, so that's not bad. So obviously, if the population stays the same, we must be able to, in this scenario, keep it the same. Where's food? Right, there's food, the yellow one. Right, so basically again, food gradually rising as we are, coming up with more and better and more efficient ways to produce food and to get more out of, say, the land and whatever. So then your food rises to a peak again about 2040. Now it does go a little bit down. Not sure why that is. It does go a little bit down, possibly in line with the resources, which are also going down. But food goes down, but then it goes back up. For some reason around 2060. Maybe they're factoring in that we'll have better technology and that we'll continue to figure out more efficient ways to make food, to get food, to create food. I can only assume that's where they're going with that they're assuming, which I think is a correct thing to do. They're assuming we will continue to develop better technologies and better ways of doing things. I think that's a fair assumption, because that is what happens. When a problem arises, it becomes a big problem, becomes a problem in the minds of people, then all the boffins get on it. They get on it. The scientists get on that. Get on the case. They figure shit out, You only have to look at the vaccine developments with the COV. I mean, the boffins got on that double quick, and in no time at all they had done in a year or two what it usually takes 10 years to do. So yes, I think that is a fair assumption. Now, pollution. This was the thing that killed the last one, the pollution. So in this scenario, this basically the CT scenario, the what do you call it again? Comprehensive technology scenario. Right. So in this scenario again, the food thing. So again, the pollution thing. Again, it peaks around 2050. Peaks there, but not as bad. And then it declines back down again to where it was over the rest of the century. Again, they're basically assuming we will develop as we are doing now. I mean, they've got like carbon collectors and all sorts of stuff that they're doing. So they're assuming again here that given our ingenuity and given our ability to overcome these problems, that the pollution thing will be tackled and to a large degree will be controlled. As in, they'll figure ways to top of the recycling and all the stuff that we're doing. Anyway, they'll figure better and better ways to prevent or to stop pollution. I think that is a fair assessment. Right. Yeah, now, okay, so the fourth thing here that he has, and I'm not really going to look into this because, again, this is the stabilized world scenario. So the last model, the Sustaina, again, assumes that we drastically change our societal priorities, decreasing desired family size, improving birth control availability, and deliberately choosing to limit industrial output and prioritize health and education services. It is the only one where industrial output doesn't crash, and it also allows population to continue increasing, albeit at a slower rate. We'll just have a quick goosey at this here. Now, I'm not going to spend time on this one because I don't think, at least based on the current situation and the current times we live in, the current mindset, I don't think, at least now, the appetite is there for drastic societal change. Now, there are pockets of people, there are pockets of this, the population who want this. The Greta Thunbergs, all these wingnuts, they basically want drastic societal change, and I don't personally think that's going to happen. So here's your graph. Yeah, you can see basically the thing is a lot more balanced. It's kind of this is pollution again up and then backs down. Population stays pretty, ends up being pretty stable. Also your food is in pretty good shape. Your industrial output again levels off and doesn't decline. No, I don't buy this one. Yes, this is you're into pie in the sky stuff here. It would be nice, but no, I don't think people are going to buy that scenario. This is your idealized scenario, and I don't think that's going to happen. Now, right, which future are we heading for? One thing the 2020 paper attempts to do is assess which model most closely represents the current data. Well, Harrington obtained data points that measure the variables tracked by the model, and she includes a regression analysis, some mumbo jumbo there. Her analysis concludes that the business as usual 2 and comprehensive technology CT scenarios best fit the data points that she collected. Okay. Now, right, well, I'm not going to, again, he's comparing those two models. So the business as usual thing is basically we do nothing. We just carry on regardless and, well, essentially burn it all to the ground. I don't think that's going to happen. Could happen, but I don't think so. I think there's too much of an appetite for the second model, the CT, the one where the comprehensive technology model, where we basically moderate things and we kind of get a grip on it. It's not perfect, but it's enough to kind of stop us collapsing. Right. How does he finish off here? Right. Now, okay, so Dana writes, my sense is that the most important takeaway from these models is that we need to take definitive action. As demonstrated by these fairly simple models, we have known for at least 50 years that our current pattern of consumption is not sustainable. The exact consequences of our inaction may be hard to predict, but it is clear that business as usual will not continue to yield the same benefits as the future. Right, okay, so what's my takeaway from all that? Is society going to collapse in 2040? No, it's not. There may be, we're not going to be in the same position we are now, but I think it's probably like that, the CT model. The comprehensive technology model. I think we will continue to try and get a handle on things because I think we have to. And I think most people realise to a greater or lesser degree, but they do realise that we have to. I don't think anybody really at this point would buy into the idea that we can just keep going. No, I don't think at this point anybody, young or old, buys that. So I think that model which is not perfect. Okay, it's not perfect, but I think it's at least sustainable. At least we can kind of keep working with that, and I think it'll continue to get better. So if we stabilise things by middle of the century, 2040, if you like, to go by the theme of this video, yes, I think we will continue to plug away at the sustainability, and I think we will eventually work things out, because that's what humans do. When these problems come along, we might huff and puff and procrastinate and go round the fucking houses a million times, but we do eventually get there. We do eventually figure things out. We do eventually come up with a solution. I'd like to think that. I do think that. And on balance, looking at the different scenarios there, is society going to collapse in 2040? Should I go out and buy tins of beans and start digging a bunker in the garden? No. And I don't think you should too. But hey, you do you, I'll do me. Yeah, what do you think? Are we headed for disaster? Are we headed for the iceberg? Are we on the Titanic? Well, I don't think so.